most recent killings of 26 persons in Uru village in Anka local government area. Disturbed that these attacks have resulted in the death of between 10,000 to 15,000 people from 2011 to date. Also disturbed that the activities of these armed bandits have resulted in the burning down of several households, the destruction of yet to be estimated hectares of farmland, including cattle and other form of livestock roasted. This is in addition to the loss of over 300 million naira paid as ransom by individuals and communities. Aware that there is an estimated 16,000 widows in Zamfara State today, Mr. President, and about 5,000 rape victims and about 40,000 orphans, taking a conservative figure of 8,000 adults being killed from 2011 to date, and an average of 2 wives per person and 5 children per family. This gives a total number of more than 40,000 orphans to be catered for in Zamfara State today without assistance from anybody. Mr. President, further disturbed that these killings have brought untold hardship to several other families who had to squeeze and accommodate these displaced families, sharing accommodation and scarce food items and clothing. Mr. President, like I said, we have never established IDP camps and so on and so forth. So all these people, the orphans and everybody, are being accommodated by their neighbors in surrounding villages who are continually being attacked and attacked every day. Mr. President, alarmed by the negative consequences arising from this, a need for humanitarian intervention to the growing number of widows and orphans. And accordingly, I urge the Senate to resolve: 1, urge the federal government to with immediate effect approve a sizable quantity of grants from this strategic reserve approval to Zamfara State in the current distribution of the 30,380 metric tons of grains approved for distribution to IDPs in Northeast and North Central. Direct NEMA to, in conjunction with security agencies, because this is very necessary, as like I said, Mr. President, more than 40 to 60% of Zamfara State villages and towns is not in the hands of constituted authority. The bandits ran supreme there, so they need the cover of the security agencies to be able to carry out this very important assignment. To carry out a holistic census of people injured, raped, opened or widowed as a result of the activities of these bandits in the state. With a view to assisting them through the various interventions by well-meaning individuals, Nigerians, corporate bodies, MDS, local and foreign bodies. And finally, I want to appeal to my colleagues to also grant the designation of Zamfara State as a priority area in all activities of local and international humanitarian donor agencies. I so submit, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. Abacha.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I remain Senator Emmanuel Boacha. I represent the peace-loving people of Taraba South. Mr. President, before I second this motion, I want to commend my friend, colleague, Senator Marafa, for bringing up this matter. I actually was in the room with him. I had thought of bringing up a motion like this. From the information provided by Senator Marafa, these grains were meant for IDPs in the Northeast. Mr. President, it will interest you that the Northeast has Taraba as part of it. And there are many IDPs in Taraba State. Just as other states, Borno, for instance, Adamawa and Yobe were affected by the insurgency. So it was in Taraba, except there was no open action. But we had quite a number of insurgents there, and we have also refugees there in their numbers. In my own local government, yesterday, the number of people that trooped out from surrounding settlement to come into the into the town is well over 1,000, Mr. President. And from the calculation, from the enumeration of the Ministry of Agriculture, Taraba is not included. And Taraba is in the northeast, also affected largely by this insurgency. So I am deeply worried what parameter was used by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to exclude Taraba State. And having said this, while I agree with my colleague and support this motion, or rather second this motion, that Zamfara should also be included because there are victims of crisis there, Taraba should as well be included because it actually falls within the original mandate of the Ministry of Agriculture, Federal Ministry of Agriculture. So having said this, Mr. President, may I second this motion as moved by my colleague.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I'm Senator Mohamed Ali Ndume, representing Borno South. Mr. President, I rise to support this motion and also to possibly even expand it because the issue of internally displaced people in this country is almost like country over. We hear of displaced people in Ebonyi State, we hear displaced people in Benue, and if you are a villager or village boy like me, you can imagine that the market in every village is either once a week or twice a week. And you see the quantity of food they bring to the market. And you just imagine that these people are totally displaced. They cannot do business. They cannot go to their farms. They depend on what is given to them. Well, 30,000 metric ton looks like a big number, but it's not enough. The crisis we have now is a humanitarian one that the government needs to do more. Therefore, I support this motion to include in the amendment that the quantity of food, one, be increased, and two, it should clearly be stated as grains that will be supplied or distributed to internally displaced people in Nigeria. The NEMA people know where they are. Wherever we have such humanitarian crisis, NEMA people know. Since they are the one in charge, they should say, okay, whoever, whether it's Federal Ministry of Agriculture, they should be directed to distribute, increase the quantity and distribute it to all internally displaced people in Nigeria. In Ebonyi State, they should go and buy gari and pounded yam and distribute to people. That is the first priority. That's my own contribution on this motion.
I think this is a very straightforward motion. So let's go to the prayers. If you need to amend it or to add additional prayer, I think we can deal with that. First is to urge the federal government to, with immediate effect, approve a sizable quantity of grains to Zamfara State and the current distribution of 30,380 metric tons of grains approved for distribution to IDPs in Northeast and North Central. Amendment, Senator Bankwa.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My amendment is to, in addition to Zamfara State.
Sorry, I think we have visitors from our colleagues from the House of Reps. Sir Leader. Hold on, please. Hold on, let's move our motion. Hold on, please.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, I move that we suspend Order 17 to allow our colleagues from the House of Representatives who are visiting this afternoon.
Madam Leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion
has moved that we suspend further deliberations of the other paper to allow our colleagues from the House of Representatives to pay solidarity visit to the Senate. I so second.
Dear colleagues, those in support of the motion that we suspend on the 17th to allow our colleagues from the House of Reps to sit in with us and deliberate, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Welcome to the vibrant members of the Green Chamber. Welcome.
It's a serious matter. It is.
Please take your seats. Please take your seats. Yes.
Leader, how are you? Distinguished colleagues, honorable members of the House of Representatives, on behalf of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, let me welcome the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, the leadership of the House of Reps, and the entire members who are here seated with us at these hallowed chambers. I thank you for your solidarity. This morning, we had an unusual incident in the chambers of the Senate. At about 11:30, some armed thugs invaded the chambers, the Senate chambers, assaulted some of our staff and some of the media persons. They also forcefully took away the mess of the Senate. And they passed through this entrance, passed through all the gates, and left the National Assembly with that mess. They attempted kidnapping 2 of our senators. They were eventually left. But we decided that we will not be intimidated by any circumstance. We will stand by our democracy, we will defend our democracy. It is an affront on democracy, it's an affront on the Senate, it's an affront on the National Assembly, it's an affront on our parliament. But we are going to stand together to ensure that we continue the assignment Nigerians gave us to represent them. We are going to get to the root of this matter. And I believe that I speak the mind of all of you here if I say that security agencies must recover our mess within 7 days. Okay, they must recover within 24 hours. All right. So we are giving the Inspector General of Police and the Director SSS to recover our mess within 24 hours. Those in support of resolution say aye. I didn't hear you. Those in support of this prayer say aye. The ayes have it. So let me again thank the Deputy Speaker and our colleagues from the House of Representatives. I want to assure you that we will refuse to be intimidated. We are going to carry out our assignment fully. We've decided to go through everything on our other papers today. Even if it takes us sitting till 6 p.m., we'll conclude everything here because that's what we are being paid to do. So once more, I want to thank you, and if you want to say a few words, we'll be happy to allow you to do that.
Thank you very much, the Senate President, distinguished senators, honorable colleagues. I don't know how to start other than you have captured everything. I've read a lot of books about representative democracy. And what baffles me most is the fact that once you try to demean the institution of the assembly, then you are pretenders to the institution of democracy. That means once your assembly ceases to function, or you want to ostracize it, or you want to muzzle it, then definitely you are no longer practicing democracy. And so, I will first of all, from that point, implore those people who are pretenders of practicing democracy to know that it is the assembly that defines democracy. And so, because of the fact that we lack this basic knowledge, because of the fact that because of the way some of us grew up and started politics and practicing politics, a lot of Nigerian populace still don't agree with the fact that if we have to develop, the institution of legislature must be well strengthened. And once you don't do that, you must as well forget democracy. I was coming out of my office this morning because yesterday I discussed with the speaker and he said, you go and preside today. And some sergeant arms, they rushed at me and said, Oga, please go back in. Some people have invaded the National Assembly. I said, wow. Before I knew it, they came to tell us that the maze has been taken away. But when I entered this red chamber today, and I saw another maze here, then I feel happy, and I'm satisfied that democracy is going to work in Nigeria. And in fact, without a proper report from you, we decided on our own too, to start sitting and follow our other paper and to make sure that we treat every item on the other paper as it should be treated. And the first thing we did this morning was to move an urgent matter of public importance on what happened. And we are about taking a resolution on it before members decided eventually that we must visit here. So solidarize not with you alone, to tell Nigerians that this state assembly is going to make sure that democracy must work in Nigeria.
And I want to quote the leader of the House. He said, "We have gone this far, but we want to make sure that we know what actually happened here before we take a further step. And we are in solidarity with you." And probably part of the resolution we are going to eventually take on the motion is to also add our own voice to the fact that the maize must be recovered within 24 hours. Distinguished senators, honorable colleagues, I don't want to take too much of our time because we still have our own issues to attend to. And one of the most important one is you eventually concluded that part of the alteration of the Constitution yesterday. We want to do ours today so that we are not left behind and to make sure that that is going to be a job that is concluded and it is assented to. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. You can be rest assured that whatever touches you, of course, touches the House of Representatives. And I know it's vice versa. Once again, Mr. Senate President, distinguished senators, honorable colleagues, thank you for giving us this opportunity. And maybe that is even a precursor to the fact that probably in the near future, some of us will continue. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker. Let me say that I was very proud of our House of Representatives. Please take your seats. Kindly take your seats. Kindly take your seats. How are you? Distinguished. God bless you. Kindly take your seat, please. From Kaduna Central, Senator Shehu Sani, please take your seat. Bauchi South, Senator Misao, please take your seat. Yeah. Central. From Bauchi Central, Senator Misao, please take your seat. Kindly take your seats, please. Distinguished colleagues, kindly take your seats, please. Chairman, Youth and Sports, Senator Joseph Obina, please take your seat. Senator Ali Mekana, distinguished Senate President, the Senate is reconvened for you to preside, sir.
Senator Kwakwaso, we were making an amendment to the prayer 1, right? Go back to it, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, my amendment to prayer 1 will be urge the federal government to, with immediate effect, approve a sizable quantity of grains to Zamfara, Kano, Kaduna, and all other states that are affected by the violence.
Kaduna where?
Kano, Kaduna, and all other states that are affected.
Yes, Senator. Yes, Manager.
Just an amendment, a simple amendment on its own amendment. James Manager, Delta South is my name. To increase, as he said, more units or tons of grains to Zamfara and any other, not just Kano, don't mention another name, and any other IDPs in the entire country. Any other, all others.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is distinguished Senator Mao Arukohu Abunwabia North. What doing is what doing well. Mr. President, if you look at the first motion and second motion, they are related. So to solve the problem is that the one should be all the federal government to with immediate effect approve a sizable quantity of grains to Zamfara State, Ebonyi State, and other parts of the country where for distribution to IDPs, and all parts of the country approve for distribution to IDPs in the country. So what I'm saying, since there is a motion carrying Zamfara and Ebonyi, those two should be specifically mentioned. Every other thing we are adding here is an amendment, and we cannot list the entire country. So it should be Zamfara State, Ebonyi State, and all other countries. That is it. Yes.
Okay. Those in support of the prayer 1 as amended, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2. Direct NEMA to, in conjunction with security agencies, conduct a holistic census of people injured, raped, orphaned, and widowed as a result of activities of armed bandits in Zamfara State, with a view to assisting them through the various interventions by well-meaning individual Nigerians, corporate bodies, MDAs, local and foreign bodies. Those in support of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3. Designate Zamfara State as a priority area in all activities of local, international, humanitarian, and donor agencies. Those in support of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. Those in support of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it. Senior leader. For that prayer, let's adjourn.
The Senate President, my name is Senator Tayo Alasho Adura, Ondo Central Senatorial District. I'm seeking that this prayer should be taken as additional prayer for, in respect of this matter, that a state of emergency should be declared in Zamfara State and other affected states in view of the killings and kidnappings that are happening in those states.
Is there anybody seconding that? Do you want to second it? Eh?
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Senator Ahmed Abubakar Malai, the Adamawa South. Mr. President, you know that yesterday you gave us ample time to discuss about these killings. You know.
No, please second this additional prayer if you want to. Put your microphone.
If a state of emergency is declared in those days, I'm sure we are going to continue to this state and then definitely have a solution to this.
Those in support of the additional prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it. Say leader.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, The second order of the day is a motion standing in the name of Senator Sam Egwu on the need to include Ebonyi State IDPs in the federal government grant distribution scheme under the Special Relief Intervention Plan. Mr. President, haven't we taken something similar?
Senator Sam Egwu, do you still think we can go ahead with this motion? Because it's been taken by events.
Mr. President, I agree that my motion is similar to the first one, but I still want to read it. I will read it and we also conclude. We will debate it because it's almost the same thing. So, Mr. President, aware that the federal government, under the Special Relief Intervention Plan, okay.
Well, Mr. President, you recall that yesterday, Tuesday, the 17th of April, 2018, the Senate, by Order 42, sub 2 of our standing order, approved that this motion be moved on the next legislative day, which is today. Accordingly, you may wish to invite Senator Sam Egwu to move his motion. Exactly.
No,
hold on. Go ahead, Sam Egwu.
Thank you, my able President. I remain Senator Sam Egwu. I represent Ebonyi North, Senatorial District in Ebonyi State. Mr. President, aware that the federal government, under the Special Relief Intervention, is distributing about 40,000 metric tons of grain, comprising of rice, maize, sorghum, and soya, to about 1.8 million internally displaced persons in the Northeast to address the food crisis resulting from the insurgency in the region. Aware also that the federal government sometimes last year issued directives to the Nigerian Customs Service to distribute seized perishable items to IDPs in the Northeast. Observes that NEMA in the past 1 month have been enumerating and distributing food items to the affected persons at their doorsteps in camps and host communities in the same Northeast. Notes that a breakdown of food items distributed indicated that 144,406 displaced persons, representing 24,068 households, were enumerated in Yobe, while in Adamawa, a total of 17,829 IDPs, representing 4,656 households, have also been enumerated. Worried that despite the monumental humanitarian crisis caused by the communal clashes in Ebonyi State and other states of the Federation, resulting in IDP camps in Eda, Igbagu, Inyimagu, Enyiba, and Opuitumo communities, which is beyond what the state government can handle alone. No agency of federal government, including NEMA, has come to the aid of the victims by way of providing them with relief materials, despite the Special Relief Intervention Plan by the federal government. Mr. President, IDP is IDP. Whether they are caused by Boko Haram or by insurgency, communal clashes can also lead to IDPs, and they are also human beings. Accordingly resolved, Mr. President, the Senate accordingly resolves to call on the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, to immediately intervene through the provision of relief materials and inclusion of other victims of communal crisis in the various IDP camps in Ebonyi State and other states of the Federation with IDPs in the grain distribution scheme under the Special Relief Intervention Plan of the federal government. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. My respected colleagues, Senator Obinogba, my name. I represent the good people of Ebonyi Central District. Mr. President, I rise to second this very important and straightforward motion, ably moved by my leader, the former governor of Ebonyi State, distinguished Senator Sam. Mr. President, you know that every state in this country is equal, no matter the size. And if anything happens in every state, I believe strongly that the way Mr. A is treated, it is also good for Mr. B to be treated the same. This IDP something has been there in Ebonyi State as a result of the crisis between the Cross River State and the Ebonyi State. Then the internal crisis in Izi community, local government, and the poor local government. A lot of these IDPs has been there, and only the state is taking care of them. So there's need for the federal government, just as this motion said, to include Ebonyi State in this IDP circle. It is very, very important, and I believe strongly, just as we said in Zafra, that everything that is done for IDP, call it in Adamawa, call it in any other, it should be extended to Ebonyi State. Mr. President, I so second this motion. Thank you.
Well, this is I think this is basically the same thing with the earlier motion we took. So do we take it that it's been overtaken by event? All right, so Senator Samegu, your point has been noted and has been included in the resolution which you took earlier in the first motion. So Ebonyi will be fully taken care of. Thank you so much. Senior Leader.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the third to 8th order of the day are second reading bills as listed on the order paper. Distinguished senators will recall that about 12 bills were withdrawn from the presidency for several reasons, and these bills have been jointly worked on by a committee of both houses. The purpose of these bills is for them to be referred to the committee of the whole for passage. The single senators will also recall that these bills went through the 3 readings in both chambers of the National Assembly. There will be no need, therefore, for further debate on them. And therefore move that these bills be read the second time and referred to the committee of the whole, one after the other. I so move.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion as moved by the leader. I so.
Dear colleagues, those in support of the prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish an independent National Assembly Budget and Research Office which shall provide the National Assembly with objective, timely, and non-partisan analysis needed for economic and budget decisions and other related matters 2018, second reading.
Dear colleagues, a bill for an act to establish an independent national Assembly Budget and Research Office
which shall provide the National Assembly with objective, timely and non-partisan analysis needed for economic and budget decisions and other related matters, 2018, second reading, taken and referred to the Committee of the Whole. Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to provide for corporate manslaughter to make corporate organizations criminally liable for death of employees arising from their act of omission and for other related matters, 2018, second reading.
Dear colleagues, a bill for an act to provide for corporate manslaughter to make corporate organizations criminally liable for death of employees arising from the act of omission and for other related matters, 2018, second reading taken, and referred to the Committee of the Whole. Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to repeal the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria Act 1973 and reenact the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria and for other related matters connected therewith, 2018, second reading.
Dear colleagues, a bill for an act to repeal the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria Act 1973 and reenact the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria and further matters connected therewith, 2018, second reading taken and referred to the Committee of the Whole. Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish the National Postgraduate College of Medicine, Laboratory Science, and for other matters connected therewith, 2018, second reading.
Dear colleagues, a bill for an act to establish the National Postgraduate College of Medical Laboratory Science and further matters connected therewith, 2018, second reading taken and referred to the Committee of the Whole. Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish the Federal Capital Territory Civil Service Commission and for other related matters and other matters connected therewith, 2018, second reading.
Dear colleagues, a bill for an act to establish the Federal Capital Territory Civil Service Commission and for other matters connected therewith, 2018, second reading taken and referred to the Committee of the Whole. Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish the Chartered Institute of Human Capital Development of Nigeria, charged, among other things, with the responsibility of entrenching professional excellence, enhancing competence, and setting standards for best practices in learning and performance among other human capital development practitioners in Nigeria and for matters connected therewith, 2018, second reading.
Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to establish the Chartered Institute of Human Capital Development of Nigeria, charged, among other things, with the responsibility of entrenching professional excellence, enhancing competence, and setting the standards for best practice in learning and performance among other human capital development practitioners in Nigeria, and for matters connected there with 2018, second reading taken and referred to the Committee of the Whole. State Leader. It will be taken during the next legislative day, please. We'll take it at another legislative sitting.
So we take them next legislative. Another legislative. We stand them down. I mean that we stand down the. When are we taking them for that day?
Another legislative day. We'll fix it. Use the word another legislative.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the ninth order of the day is the second reading of the Independent National Electoral Commission Act 2010, Amendment Bill 2018. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber yesterday, Tuesday, the 17th of April 2018. Mr. President, may we invite Senator Suleiman Nazif to move the motion for the bill to be read a second time.
Senator Nazif.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my highly respected colleagues. My name is Senator Suleiman Nazif, and I represent Bauchi North. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which seeks to make provisions for the sequence of election in Nigeria. SB 667. Essentially, this bill provides for election into the following sequence. 1. Governorship election. 2. State House of Assembly and National Assembly elections. 3. Presidential elections. It will be pertinent to consider some crucial points in pushing this bill. 1. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended does not specifically present a sequence for which election into the respective offices ought to be conducted, other than merely listing the prospective offices into which election will be conducted by INEC. Specifically, Section 15A of the 3rd Schedule of the Constitution provides that the Commission shall have powers, A, to organize, undertake, and supervise all elections to the office of the President, Vice President, and Governor and Deputy Governor of a state, and to membership of the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the House of Assembly of each stage of the Federation. The drafters of this portion of the Constitution did not intend that this should be a sequence of the conduct of election into elective offices in Nigeria, but merely list the respective offices. INEC is empowered to exercise their responsibilities. This fact has raised a lot of concern of possible manipulations of the outcome of result of election, hence the importance of this bill. This sequence of election, as proposed in the bill, does not in any way infringe or violate or contravene any provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Historically, election into the respective office in Nigeria have been conducted in various sequences. From 1979 up to 2015, it has therefore become imperative to have some certainty and predictability in the sequence of election in Nigeria, as it is the case in most developed democracies in the world. For example, the United Kingdom, France, Japan, India, and most African nations like South Africa. Ghana and Liberia all have fixed sequences for the conduct of their election. This also, to a large extent, will help strengthen the democratic structures of a nation, as well as guarantee the effective planning and conduct of election by INEC. The table below traces the history of sequence of election in Nigeria from 1979 up to 2015. 1979, first election. It started with the Senate on the 7th July 1979. The second election was the House of Representatives on the 14th July 1979. And the third elections were the State House of Assembly and the gubernatorial on the 28th July 1979. And the fourth elections were for the President on the 11th August 1979. So there were 4 elections in 1979. In 1983, it started with the presidential election on the 6th of August 1983, and it started second gubernatorial State House of Assembly on the 14th August 1983, House of Representatives on the 27th August 1984. So there were 4 elections also in 1983. In 1992, it started with the gubernatorial State House of Assembly from the 14th, 4th, 1992. That's April. The second elections was for the House of Representatives / the Senate on the 4th of July, 1992. The third elections were for the President, which was on the 12th July, 1993. That means there were 3 elections in 1992. In 1999, it started with the State House of Assembly, House of Reps, and Senate on the 20th February 1999. The second elections were for the gubernatorial / the presidential election, which took place on the 27th February 1999. In 2003, it started with the State House of Assembly, House of Representatives, and the Senate on the 12th April 2003. and the second election was for the gubernatorial and presidential election 19th April 2003. That means there were 2 elections in 2003. The year 2007, it started with the State House of Assembly / gubernatorial on the 14th April 2007. And the second elections were for the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the President on the 21st April 2007. For 2011, it started with the State House of Assembly, House of Reps, and the Senate on the 9th April 2011. For governorship and presidential, it was done on the 16th April 2011. That means there were 2 elections in 2011. Now in 2015, the House of Representatives, it started with it, and the Senate and the presidential election on the 3rd March 2015. Then the State House of Assembly gubernatorial on the 4th March 2015. This has demonstrated the inconsistencies in the sequence of election in Nigeria, which this bill seeks to cure. Nigeria is probably the only nation in the world that has this sort of inconsistency in the sequence of their electoral process, which leaves room for manipulation of the outcome of an election and by extension affects the integrity of such an election. Number 3, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, for the avoidance of doubt, this bill will also in no way fetter or limit the discretion of INEC to perform their function as provided by law. It should be noted that the said discretion of INEC in the discharge of their constitutional duties is not absolute, but must be in accordance with the Act of this National Assembly. A careful look at the provision of Section 76 of the Constitution as amended even make election by INEC in accordance with the Electoral Act. Elections to each House of the National Assembly shall be held on a date to be appointed by INEC in accordance with the Electoral Act. The Electoral Act therefore provides the required guide to the performance of the constitutional obligation of INEC. Therefore, where expedient, as in the case, this National Assembly has by an act provided a guide to the exercise of this discretion of INEC. Number 4, it is the constitutional responsibility of the National Assembly, after due consultation with their constituents, to determine the sequence that best suits the yearning and aspiration of majority of the electorate in Nigeria. Therefore, having sampled the opinion of majority of Nigerian voters across the nation and those in diaspora, it has become clear that the proposed sequence will guarantee a fearless and free election. This is also important so as not to give a candidate an undue advantage in any election and to avoid a situation where certain candidates who may ordinarily not win an election will rest on the floor of victory of a superior office. Mr. President and my highly respected colleagues, I therefore urge the President and distinguished colleagues to support this bill. Your Excellency.
The leader.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, let me right away state very clearly, without missing any words, without being ambiguous, that I'm totally, vehemently, and comprehensively against this bill. I said before that I voted against the desire of the National Assembly to determine the sequence of elections. And when I said that, I also added, and I'll vote again against it. And I'm doing that today. Mr. President, let's be practical. In addition to unnecessarily incurring avoidable costs in elections, the National Assembly, the federal government, particularly the legislature here, this chamber and that one in the House, should be able to be in place at any time to legislate for the good governance of this country. And therefore, when you leave them to come later, suppose something happens, where will Nigeria be without the National Assembly and without the President? Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I believe that the right thing for us is not to legislate on the sequence, but to support INEC to conduct very free, fair, and transparent elections, and also to ensure that this National Assembly is prudent when it comes to costs and expenditures, rather than bringing additional cost. Let me expatiate on additional cost. We had 2 elections in 2015. The national or federal elections and the state elections for governorship and state assembly. Now we are introducing an additional cost which we don't need. Based on this facts, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I want to advise that we stick with what we practiced in 2015. We appropriate what INEC needs. We monitor what INEC does to ensure that this country does not go into any crisis, God forbid.